Okay, so I've got written here day 3, which is then crossed out, and written after it 8, and the explanation is as follows. I have been sick for the last 4 to 5 days. A mix of heavy fever, lethargy, vomiting, and a cold. I haven't been up to journaling. I'll write down what I remember. What I remember now is barely a thing. As such, I believe the lethargy and the complete lack of any mental cohesion at that time was just all completely gone. Like, it was just, I don't know, I can barely remember the 5 days. But I do remember day 3 quite clearly, and this is what we did. This will explain why it's clear. We headed to S21 and the killing fields. It was harsh. At the end of the procession of buildings at S21, I was feeling completely emotionally drained. There was a small Buddhist temple in the last room, which held a large gold bell, bordered by torture devices and whatnot. And in the last room that I stayed, there was a small Buddhist temple in the last room, and I stayed there for some time. I lit an incense stick and placed it in the holder, and sat for some time contemplating. For some time, it was about an hour or so of just sitting and reeling in shock. And from there, we headed to the killing fields, which I was gone in the killing fields, and would rather not write about it. And that hasn't changed. Alright, day 4. Today was the royal palace. Unfortunately, the latest king has recently passed away, and his body is residing in the palace. So instead we headed to the Silver Pagoda and the Elephant Place. Yes, the Silver Pagoda was amazing. Inside, the floor was made entirely of silver blocks, each weighing over 1 kilogram, and there were hundreds of Buddhas. But photos cannot explain the sheer extravagance of which contrasts so heavily with the rural regions which we visited, which is in fact, I believe, synonymous with the role of Christianity, wherein the Pope is living in the complete luxury as he prays for starving children, whereas when he sells one of his gloves and feeds a village for an entire month, kind of thing. Moving on. Okay, day 5. The long, only 3-hour drive up to the Aurala district and a school. I was by this time delirious, so I was taken back to the Aurala LWD, Life with Dignity, Center. I had a temperature of 40 degrees, and that night was the worst. The next day was similar. Now, what was excellent, and I've got videos making a tour of the LWD camp, was the kindness that the LWD staff who, as of last year or the year before, were completely made up of Cambodians. So there was, which is excellent. It just shows such an improvement from the Pol Pot regime and whatnot. And yeah, their kindness was beyond anything you would find in Australia, despite their history of suffering and terror. Alright, day 6. And day 6 I spent most of the time in the car trying to focus, and I simply was unable to, where we visited a couple of schools around in the LWD, like 4-wheel drives and whatnot, and villages. And what we did at the villages basically was, instead of going out there to, I don't know, to help build a large compound of, or not compound, a large area where we can grow long-term beneficial fruit trees and whatnot, like mangoes and citrus and whatnot, to help the villagers down the track. Instead, we mainly listened to what the villagers had done in the previous 8 or so years to help themselves, which is incredibly empowering to them, which is a service in its own right. And just listening is such a, it takes so little to just sit down and listen and just shut your gob. But it makes such a difference to these people who have really spent their time and effort and money and livelihoods in making their lives better. Day 7 was a reenactment of day 6. I was still quite sick, and yes. Okay, day 8. Today. I was writing that. Today I was feeling 80%. A great improvement. We took the 4-wheel drives in the van up to another village. It took 2 hours to get there. At the village, we visited a school and played with the children, just like gave out stickers and threw up balloons which we blew up, and yes, and yeah, we visited the school, played and sang songs, and then we headed to a preschool and had lunch. I then came back with 4 others who had other sicknesses, and here I am. That is day 8. Yes, that is day 8.